Again, and in this video I'm going to be teaching you guys about Unit 14, which is Homeostasis, Part 1. Now, I decided first to do Part 1, but thinking that it's a really short topic, so I'm going to focus this in one video. Now, the environment of a living organism is always changing, right? In your room it might be 23 degrees, outside might be 10 degrees. But the cells, however, in your body does not change. Your body keeps this environment inside you almost the same. And this is homeostasis. Now, homeostasis is the function in your body that keeps your body temperature at a constant 37 degrees Celsius all the time. It is important because almost all enzymes in your body works best at 37 degrees. And then, if your enzymes in your body work best, you can carry out the best function in your body to keep you at your most prime or whatever condition in you. Now, it also keeps a constant amount of water in your body because having too much water in your blood causes water to be drawn out of your cells by osmosis, which will damage your cells as well. Now, keeping blood glucose levels the same is also a part of homeostasis, which I'll be teaching you in the part 2 of this video. Now, there's a main difference between animals, and one of them is some animals are ectothermic, some animals are endothermic. Now, ectothermic animals are cold-blooded. These include amphibians, fish, and reptiles. Endothermic animals are warm-blooded. These include mammals and birds. Now, ectothermic animals are cold-blooded because they cannot regulate their own body temperature. This means that their own body temperature depends on the temperature surrounding them. For example, if the outside temperature is 10 degrees, then the body temperature of a snake will also be 10 degrees. But if the outside temperature is 10 degrees, the body temperature of a human will always be 37 degrees. Now, endothermic animals has a number of advantages. This is that it can move and help itself to survive in any kind of condition. This is because that their body keeps their body temperature the same. Now, in ectothermic animals, their body cannot do that. This means that as the surrounding temperature gets colder, its metabolism gets slower. Now, when a temperature drops to a certain point, the metabolism in an ectothermic animal is so slow that it cannot move. Now, but there's a price to pay. Endothermic animals have to eat a lot more food than ectothermic animals, because in the process of keeping your body temperature constant, your body constantly uses energy to do that. Now, the skin is one of the most important organs involved in homeostasis. It is made up of two layers, the epidermis and the dermis. Now, cells in the epidermis are made by mitosis of the cells at the base of it. So basically, the cells at the upmost layer of your skin is always being replaced by the cells growing from below. Okay, here's a labeled vertical section through part of your skin. You see that that is divided into the epidermis and the dermis. Now, the top layer here is the cornified layer. This is a layer made of dead cells. Now, this acts as the first barrier of defense against diseases and pathogens. Now, under the skin, you can see that we have a pressure receptor, a temperature receptor, little tiny blood vessels, and adipose tissues, and also a sweat gland here. Now, these blood vessels are so near to the skin because, I'll explain later, that they will carry the heat up to the skin so they can be lost. Now, this is the hair erector muscles, and this will be involved in the homeostasis part. Now, these adipose tissues right here, they insulate the body, basically. Oh, and it also contains a lot of receptors. So these are sensitive to touch, pain, pressure, and temperature. So they will help you to keep aware of changes in your environment as well. So basically, the function of the sweat gland is to basically produce sweat. Well, that's very obvious. Now, sweat is mostly water with small amounts of salts and urea dissolved in it. Now, when sweat is produced, the water in it is evaporated, and this process cools the body. And also, these fat cells here also act as a source of energy reserve as well. Now, the dermis, well, just explained, mostly made of connective tissue that loses its elasticity as we age. Contains sweat glands, blood vessels, and nerve endings. Underneath the dermis is a layer of fat called adipose tissue that insulates your body, as well as acting as an energy reserve. Now, the hypothalamus. This is a part of the brain that controls the mechanism that keeps the constant internal temperature in our bodies. It acts like an organic thermostat that contains temperature receptors near the skin, like every nerve ending, and sends electrical impulses to the respective parts of the body. Now, its main control mechanism behind is the process called negative feedback. Now, when our body temperature falls, it is firstly detected by the hypothalamus. Now, the hypothalamus sends electrical impulses to your muscles, which then work faster and produce a lot of heat. This is called shivering, right? And also, it increases the rate of metabolism so that it produces more heat as well as more energy. And then your hair on your body stands up. Now, this in humans does not work very much. It just produces goose pimples. But the fact that your skin are now standing at 90 degrees to your skin, it traps a layer of warm air next to your body and acts as an insulator to your body. Now, when your hair stands up, your hair erector muscles contract and pull the skin vertical. Now, your blood system conserves heat in the process of vasoconstriction. Now, vasoconstriction is basically the narrowing of all these blood vessels here. So the narrowing of these blood vessels in order to preserve heat is called vasoconstriction. This causes less heat to be lost via the skin and thus preserve heat and help warm the body. When temperature rises, so basically when your body temperature rises above normal, above 37 degrees, it is also detected by the hypothalamus first. Now, the hypothalamus causes the hair on your body to lie flat on our bodies. This is when your hair erector muscles relaxes. And then we sweat. The water in the sweat evaporates and then it's cooling the body because it's taking the heat away from the body. Now, the blood system also loses heat in the process of vasodilation. This is the process of these blood vessels here widening. So this brings more heat to the skin, which can be lost. Now, it also causes our muscles to work slow. Doesn't really do that, but it also causes our metabolism to slow down for a little bit because if our metabolism rate is fast, then we produce heat more. Okay. Next, this is basically the diagram from my book about what happens to your skin and body when the body is too cold or too hot. I've explained that already. So basically, you can see here vasoconstriction, vasodilation. Your hair stands up, your hair lies flat, and then sweat is produced as well when your body's hot. Now, negative feedback is the overall name given to the process where the hypothalamus works to keep a constant internal environment. It is called feedback because small changes in temperature are fed back to the hypothalamus. Now, the hypothalamus is always the main receiver of the information because it needs to give instruction to the body parts that does control our body temperature. Now, here is basically how negative feedback works. So I'm gonna start right on this arrow here. Now, this arrow it basically stands for when the body is too hot. So when body temperature rises above normal, the hypothalamus, the control center, detects it, and then it sends electrical impulses around this arrow to the mechanisms to lose heat. Now, respiration slows, hair lies flat, surface blood vessels dilate, and sweating. And then the body loses heat. And it goes back here, temperature receptors in the skin, and detects the degrees, and it's also fed back to the hypothalamus. Now, when it comes here, the body's too cold. For example, your body temperature drops below normal. So what it does is that the hypothalamus detects it again, it sends electrical impulses to the mechanisms to gain, save, or save heat. So basically, respiration increases, muscles work, hair stands up, surface blood vessels contract, the body gains heat, and then it goes along again, basically. Now next is the control of blood glucose concentration. Now, this is a very important part of homeostasis, as cells need a very steady supply of glucose to allow them to carry out their function. Too less or too little glucose in the blood can cause the cells to be in critical condition because they cannot respire. Long term of this condition can cause permanent damage to the brain, as well as other important parts of the body, for example, like the liver, the heart, and the lungs. Now, the pancreas is the main organ involved in this control. Now, it is made up of two glands, and one contains a group of cells called the islets of Langerhans. Now, in these islets, it secretes two hormones into the blood, insulin and glucagon. Now, basically, insulin is the hormone that causes blood glucose level to drop. Glucagon is the hormone that causes blood glucose level to rise. Now, it works with the liver to control blood glucose concentrations. Now, both of these hormones target organs are the liver. It does not target anything else. Basically, because the liver is the main machine behind all this. Now, so basically, this is how the control of glucose level works. For example, the hypothalamus detects a rise in blood glucose level. So basically, this is here, the high blood glucose level. Now, and then the hypothalamus sends an information to the pancreas, and then causes it to secrete insulin. Now, the insulin travels to the liver, and it causes liver cells to use some glucose in respiration and store some glucose as glycogen. Now, the liver cells does this by basically absorbing all the glucose in the blood into it. And then this causes the blood glucose concentration to fall, and then eventually it returns to normal. Now, for example, here, when the blood glucose level is too low, the hypothalamus also detects it. It sends an information to the pancreas, which causes it to release glucagon. This travels to the liver, and then it causes the liver to break down glycogen, which is in storage in the liver, to glucose. Now, this glucose is released into circulation, and then it causes the blood glucose level to rise to normal. This is basically how it works. Now, one of the diseases related to the inability to control blood glucose level is type 1 diabetes. Now, this is a inherited disease that will be explained in more detail in Unit 10. Now, there are two conditions to diabetes, like more specific diabetes. They are hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. Now, hyperglycemia is when blood glucose level is too high. Hypoglycemia is when blood glucose level is too low. Now, these two words can be a little bit confusing, but you just have to learn the spelling. Glycemia is the same, it's just hyper means high, hypo means low. Now, having blood glucose level swinging too often can damage various organs. Now, most people with diabetes get into the habit of checking their blood glucose concentration regularly. Using a simple sensor, they can use their urine to test there for glucose, or they could basically test a drop of blood drawn from their fingers. Now, one recommendation for people who have type 1 diabetes is to eat little and often, and particularly avoiding large amounts of carbohydrate, because carbohydrate is starch and all those kind of things. They get broken down to glucose, and eating a lot of them means you'll be taking in a lot of glucose. Now, I'm going to end this video here because this is a relatively short video. You just have to learn the two different negative feedback. One is controlling the body temperature, one is controlling the blood glucose level. Now, I'm going to be stopped doing bio videos for a while because tomorrow is my bio exam, and after that I'm going to be focusing on chemistry. And then I'll see you guys all in my first chemistry video. Goodbye.